Ladies and gentlemen, if you enjoy my video, please click the like button and share the video. It is the only way the YouTube algorithms really notices me. I will be very grateful to you. The train station that doesn't exist. Scary story published by Scare Fiction. Read for you by Scare Fiction. Chapter 1. The Last Train. I stepped onto the train platform just as the last call for boarding echoed through the empty station. The air felt heavy, carrying the weight of the late hour. I had hesitated long enough, staring down at my phone, reading and rereading the text message from the nurse. Mom isn't doing well. I hadn't visited her in years, hadn't even called more than a few times. Guilt settled deep in my gut, but I pushed it down, reminding myself this wasn't a time for regret. The train doors hissed shut behind me. The carriage was almost completely empty. I took a seat near the window, the world outside a blur of shadows and streaks of dull light. A flicker from above made the overhead lights hum, dim for a moment before returning to full brightness. I shifted in my seat, eyes scanning the deserted rows. I had expected at least a few late-night travelers, but there was no one. The train rattled along the tracks, but the usual white noise was absent. No conductor came to check my ticket. No muffled conversations in the distance. Just the constant hum of the tracks, broken occasionally by the erratic flicker of the lights. My reflection in the window stared back at me, but the landscape outside was a smear of nothingness, like the train was speeding through an endless void. I couldn't tell if we were even moving forward, or if the world itself was standing still. I leaned back, trying to ignore the creeping sense of unease curling in my chest. But the tension built with every passing minute. Something wasn't right. The train lurched to a sudden stop, jolting me forward. I stood, peering down the aisle, but no one emerged. No announcements. No explanation. I stepped off cautiously, my feet landing on cold concrete. The station was massive, yet there wasn't a single person in sight. The walls were bare, the signage empty. I glanced at the timetable, but the screens were blank, the digital numbers frozen at some unknown hour. I turned back to the train just in time to see the doors close. The wheels screeched, and in a rush of cold air, it pulled away, leaving me standing alone on the platform. The train disappeared into the night, and the silence swallowed me whole. Chapter 2. The Unseen Passengers. The silence pressed against me like a suffocating weight as I stood there, watching the train disappear into the darkness. Cold, still air felt unnatural, as if the entire station had been frozen in time. I took a breath and looked around, hoping to find some kind of explanation, anything to ground me in reality. But the station was wrong. Posters lined the walls, but something was off. They advertised places I'd never heard of. Evergreen Pines Resort Stay Forever Read One, with an image of a lake that seemed to shimmer unnaturally, like the water was alive. Another displayed a city skyline that twisted at impossible angles, with the words, "The city that never sleeps," scrawled beneath. But it wasn't New York. My eyes drifted to a clock hanging above the platform. The second hand twitched violently, jumping forward and backward, as if it couldn't decide what time it was. The longer I stared, the heavier the air felt, thickening with an electric charge, like the tension before a storm. I walked forward, the echo of my footsteps unnervingly loud in the empty space. Every few steps, I thought I heard something behind me whispers, like someone muttering just out of earshot. I stopped and turned, my heart hammering in my chest. Nothing, no one, but I wasn't alone. I felt it. The deeper I ventured into the station, the more it seemed to twist and stretch. Hallways that had been straight just moments before now bent in on themselves, spiraling into strange loops. Stairs that should have led up dropped down into pitch-black tunnels. My mind raced, trying to make sense of the shifting surroundings, but each turn left me more disoriented than the last. In the corners of my vision, I saw shadows flicker figures, maybe people, but when I turned to face them, they were gone. My breath quickened, panic clawing at the edges of my thoughts. I needed to get out. Then I saw her. A woman stood on a distant platform, far too calm for the madness surrounding us. She stared at me, her eyes dark and unreadable. "Don't trust what you see," she called out, her voice cold, distant. Before I could ask her what she meant, she vanished. Desperate, I spotted an open door at the far end of the station. I rushed toward it, hoping it led outside. But as soon as I stepped through, my stomach dropped. I was back at the platform where I'd started, empty. Chapter 3: The Station's Secrets. Panic gripped me as I stood at the platform where I had just been. The air thickened around me, almost suffocating, and the reality of my situation crashed down like a tidal wave. I was trapped. I whirled around, searching for any semblance of an exit. Doors lined the walls, some locked, some hanging slightly ajar. I kicked open the nearest one, adrenaline surging, and stepped inside. The room was small and dusty, filled with old luggage and the scent of mildew. I scanned the space, but it only led to a corridor that seemed to stretch into infinity. "Damn it!" I yelled, frustration bubbling over. I slammed my fist against a window, the glass vibrating ominously. "Let me out." But the station was unforgiving. Each door I tried only took me back to the same empty platform, or deeper into a maze of hallways that twisted and turned, mocking me. My heart raced as I kicked another door open, but the emptiness greeted me like an old friend. Then, memories began to surface, little things that cut deeper than I expected. An old baseball cap, faded and frayed, lay abandoned on a nearby bench, the team logo barely visible. It was mine, from a summer long forgotten. I remembered my mother cheering from the bleachers, her voice ringing in my ears. But the memory twisted into something darker, her face blurring into disappointment and anger. I gripped my head, trying to push the haunting visions away. The station felt alive, shifting and morphing as I walked. I caught glimpses of ghostly figures darting just out of sight, their faces blurred like photographs left in the sun too long. The air thrummed with tension, and I could swear I heard the distant sound of a train approaching. I ran to the platform, but the tracks were empty. I glanced around, and words scrawled on the walls caught my eye. "You left me," they read, followed by another message that shifted into "You can't escape." My pulse quickened. The station was reflecting my fears, twisting them into taunts. Then, something caught my eye. A ticket, crumpled and blood-stained, lay on the ground. I picked it up, my breath hitching as I read my name printed on it, along with the date that hadn't happened yet. My heart sank. This wasn't just a station. It was a trap, a reflection of my past, and I was the one caught in its snare. Chapter 4: The Woman's Story. The echo of my own breathing filled the air as I stumbled through the twisting corridors, the blood-stained ticket clutched tightly in my hand. I needed answers, and the shadowy figures that lingered in my periphery felt like a threat that wouldn't let me go. But just when I thought I was truly alone, I saw her again, the woman from the distant platform, standing at the intersection of two hallways. Her calm demeanor contrasted sharply with the chaos around us. "You look lost," she said, her voice soft yet haunting, as if it belonged to a different time. "I am," I replied, the words tumbling out before I could catch them. "What is this place? Why are we here?" She stepped closer, her expression inscrutable. "This station is a liminal space," she said cryptically, her eyes scanning the walls as if they held secrets I couldn't yet comprehend. "A threshold between what was and what could be a waiting room for souls like us." Souls? I echoed, incredulous. What do you mean? I've been trapped here for a long time, she continued, her gaze drifting. Once, I was on a journey to see someone I loved, but I never arrived. The station took me just like it's taking you. I studied her, a sense of familiarity washing over me. There was something about her that felt both comforting and deeply unsettling. She was a traveler, like me, but she carried the weight of her unresolved trauma, a wound that never healed. The walls around us shuddered, a low growl echoing through the corridor. I jumped, heart racing, as shadows flickered at the edges of my vision, darting away whenever I tried to look closer. "What's happening?" I asked, fear creeping into my voice. "The station knows your fears," she replied, her tone growing serious. "It senses your guilt and feeds off it. It wants to keep you here, trapped in your mind." I felt a wave of panic surge. The whispers grew louder, and the walls seemed to pulse, inching closer with every breath. "But I can't stay here," I shouted, desperation clawing at my throat. "Until you confront the truth, you will remain," she warned, her eyes narrowing. "You have to face what you've buried, or it will consume you." Her words hung in the air, heavy with meaning. The shadows shifted, creeping closer, and I understood I was not just a traveler. I was the architect of my own prison. Chapter 5. The Haunted Train. The woman's words echoed in my mind as I stumbled back down the corridor, the shadows pressing in around me. I couldn't shake the feeling that I was running out of time. Just when despair threatened to swallow me whole, I spotted something unexpected at the far end of the platform. An old train, rusted and weathered, its surface caked with dust. It looked like a relic from another era, the paint peeling and the windows cracked. My heart raced at the sight of it. This could be my chance to escape. I took a step forward, hesitation tugging at my resolve, but the fear of being trapped here forever propelled me forward. Against my better judgment, I climbed aboard. Inside, the air was stale and heavy, filled with an unsettling stillness. The interior was dim, the flickering overhead lights casting erratic shadows on the walls. I took a seat, my heart pounding in my chest as the doors slid shut behind me. A shudder ran through the train, and with a lurch, we began to move. The journey was anything but ordinary. Through the grimy windows, I caught glimpses of scenes from my past moments with my mother that twisted in the light of memory. At first, they felt like simple recollections. Her laughter at my little league games, the warm embrace after a long day. But as the train rattled along, the scenes shifted, darkening, turning grotesque. I saw myself standing in the driveway, watching her drive away, my childish hands waving goodbye while guilt clawed at my insides. Suddenly, the images morphed into nightmare versions, twisted and wrong. I saw her crying, alone in a hospital bed, and I wasn't there. I heard her voice, tinged with disappointment, and then her face flickered into a horrible visage of anger and despair. I tried to look away, but the scenes wrapped around me, tightening like a noose. The shadows from before grew bolder, coalescing into figures that danced just beyond the edges of my vision. Panic surged within me as I realized these were not just random phantoms. They were fractured pieces of myself, representing moments of guilt, regret, and pain. Each figure reached out, their faces contorted into masks of anguish and accusation. Just when I thought I would break beneath the weight of it all, the train screeched to a halt. My heart dropped as I stepped off onto the platform, the all-too-familiar emptiness washing over me. And then I froze. There stood my younger self, a small boy clutching a teddy bear, staring up at me with wide, cold eyes. His gaze pierced through the haze of shame and sorrow, accusing and demanding answers I didn't have. Time stood still as I faced the reflection of everything I had abandoned. Chapter 6. The Past That Haunts. My younger self stood there, eyes wide with a mixture of innocence and accusation, clutching that worn teddy bear like it was his only lifeline. The air thickened, a heavy silence settling over the platform as I struggled to comprehend the weight of his gaze. I felt stripped bare, exposed in ways I hadn't allowed myself to be in years. "Why did you leave me?" the child seemed to ask without words. It cut through the disorienting chaos of the station, reverberating in my mind. I took a step back, dread pooling in my stomach. I was dragged into a memory I had buried deep, a pivotal moment that twisted my heart. It was years ago, a night when my mother sat on the edge of my bed, tears streaming down her face. She had needed me, and I had walked away, dismissing her cries as just another moment of weakness. I could still hear her voice, fragile and pleading. "Ethan, please don't leave me." But I had been selfish, wanting to escape the weight of her sadness. The station seemed to pulse around me, responding to my turmoil. The walls darkened, shadows creeping closer, tightening like a vise. I could feel the platforms stretching into an abyss, endless and suffocating, while trains vanished into nothingness. I was trapped in an isolation that mirrored my own heart. Time unraveled. Minutes felt like hours, and hours blurred into days. I wandered through the corridors, each step echoing my desperation. The woman reappeared, her figure flickering like a candle in the wind. "You must choose," she whispered, her tone laced with urgency. "Before it's too late." But choose what? I was losing myself, spiraling deeper into a madness where reality felt as flimsy as the shadows flickering at the corners of my vision. The station warped around me, distorting my memories into something more brutal, revealing truths I had long avoided. Then, I stumbled upon a hidden part of the station, a forgotten platform shrouded in dust and cobwebs, a place untouched by time. My heart raced as I ventured further into the darkness, and then I heard it. A voice, sweet yet tinged with sorrow, called my name. Ethan. It was unmistakable. My mother. The sound pulled me forward, igniting a flicker of hope amidst the despair. I followed the voice, my heart pounding with a mix of dread and yearning. I had to face the past, to confront the demons that had haunted me for so long. As I stepped further into the shadows, I understood that this was my moment of reckoning. Would I finally choose to confront the truth, or would I allow the station and my guilt to consume me whole? Chapter 7. The Final Revelation. I stepped onto the forgotten platform, the air thick with a sense of foreboding. Dust hung like a shroud, muffling the sounds of the station as if it too were holding its breath. With each step forward, I felt the weight of my past pressing down, and the shadows that had danced around me began to coalesce into something more tangible. The platform felt different, charged with an energy that thrummed beneath my skin. As I took a deep breath, preparing for whatever awaited me, the atmosphere shifted. The shadows pulled back, revealing the true nature of this place. The station was not merely a station. It was a manifestation of my guilt, a dark mirror reflecting the pain I had tried so hard to avoid. Each flicker of light seemed to whisper of memories, long buried my mother's laughter, her tears, the moments I had abandoned her in her time of need. Then she appeared, the woman, her form shimmering like an apparition. "You finally come," she said, her voice now resonating with familiarity. "I've been waiting." "Who are you?" I asked, a knot tightening in my chest. "I am a part of you," she revealed, her expression both sorrowful and wise. "A fragment of your mind, guiding you toward the truth. I was never real. I am your unresolved trauma, your guilt manifested." I staggered back, the revelation hitting me like a physical blow. Everything I had experienced, the whispers, the shadows, had been a projection of my own mind. The station was feeding on my pain, twisting it into something sinister. "Why did you show me this?" I demanded, the desperation in my voice palpable. "What do I do now?" "You must confront your past," she urged, her eyes softening. "Face the truth of your relationship with your mother. How you left her in her final years. How you chose distance over pain." The weight of her words crashed down upon me. I had run away, buried myself in work and distractions, avoiding the anguish of watching her grow old and frail. But now, standing in this liminal space, I was forced to reckon with that choice. The station offered me a choice: accept my guilt, accept the pain, and move on, or remain trapped forever in this desolate realm. Just as clarity began to form, the station shook violently, walls trembling as if the very fabric of reality were unraveling. The floor beneath my feet cracked, splintering into a chasm of darkness. "Ethan," my mother's voice called again, sharper now, filled with urgency and desperation. It was clearer than before, echoing through the chaos. I looked around, my heart pounding. The ground began to give way, and I knew that time was running out. Would I finally choose to face the truth, or would I let fear pull me back into the shadows? The station was collapsing, and with it, my last chance to confront the past. Chapter 8: The Escape. The ground trembled violently beneath me, the station's walls pulsating as if alive, tightening around my throat with every heartbeat. I could feel the darkness closing in, a suffocating weight pressing against my chest. My mother's voice echoed through the chaos, drawing me back into the abyss of my memories. "Ethan," she called, a desperate plea that pierced through the tumult. I stood at the precipice of decision, teetering between the haunting shadows of my guilt and the flickering light of potential redemption. The woman, the fragment of my own mind, hovered nearby, her form shimmering like smoke. "You must choose, Ethan. Face your past, or become a part of this place forever." I clenched my fists, heart racing. The guilt I had carried for so long threatened to drown me, but deep down, I knew I couldn't escape it any longer. The moment my mother needed me most, I turned my back. I had chosen distance over the pain of watching her suffer. With a roar that shook the station, I stepped forward. I choose to face the truth. My voice reverberated against the walls, resonating with an unyielding strength I hadn't known I possessed. As the words left my lips, the air shifted. The oppressive darkness receded, and the walls began to dissolve into shimmering light. The shadows that had haunted me shrank away, whispering their last vestiges of torment before fading into the ether. The woman smiled softly, her eyes filled with a bittersweet understanding. "You've made the right choice, Ethan." Before I could react, a door materialized before me, glowing with a warm, inviting light. I reached for the handle, heart pounding with a mixture of fear and hope. The moment I stepped through, I felt the weight of the station lift off my shoulders, as if I were finally breaking free from chains that had bound me for far too long. The world on the other side was bright and sterile, a stark contrast to the darkness I had left behind. I found myself in a hospital room, fluorescent lights humming softly overhead. Confusion washed over me as I took in the scene machines beeped rhythmically, and the air smelled of antiseptic. Then I saw her. My mother lay frail in the hospital bed, her chest rising and falling with labored breaths. I rushed to her side, overwhelmed by a rush of emotion. Tears stung my eyes as I grasped her hand, feeling the warmth that had slipped away for so long. "Ethan," she whispered, a smile gracing her lips, even as life faded from her eyes. I leaned in closer, desperate to absorb every moment. As I stepped out of the room, a sense of finality washed over me. I glanced out the window, and my heart sank. There, through the mist, stood the outline of the train station, haunting, familiar. Had I truly escaped? Or was this another layer of the station's trap, a cruel trick of my mind? The thought lingered like a shadow, leaving me questioning the nature of my freedom. I turned away from the window, a shiver running down my spine, knowing that the battle against my past was far from over. Was I free, or was I still ensnared in the station's web? Question echoed in my mind as I walked away, the haunting sense that I might never truly escape lingering in the air.